All right, good day and welcome everybody. Um, I'm excited to be moderating this career panel on our AAPI past, present, and future in conservation. Today, we will hear and learn from Asian American and Pacific Islander state employees on how they came to work for the different departments, councils, boards, offices in the California Natural Resources Agency, the woke culture, and advice regarding careers in public service. So welcome everybody, and welcome to our listeners and viewers online. Before we begin, I kind of do a quick introduction for myself. My name is Stephen Lai. I work for the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety as a manager in the Data Analytics Division, and today I will be your moderator. Some quick housekeeping items before we begin. We will have a handful of discussion topics we'll be asking our panelists today. At the end of our questions, we'll do the Q&A portion. So for those who have questions, you can please put them in the Q&A area during the panel, but we will get to those at the end. And then at the end, when we get to questions, if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, you can do that as well. But we will address the questions toward the end of our panel. So today, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce our panelists. So welcome all. Our lineup for today, and I do apologize if I get anybody's name wrong, but I know how that is as well. But today we have, starting off, we have Jennifer Ikimoto, who works for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife as an Assistant Chief of Special Operations in the Law Enforcement Division. Welcome. We have Sri Gopal, who works at the California Ocean Protection Council as the Coastal Habitats Program Manager. Welcome. We have Stephen Beck, who works at the California Conservation Corps as a supervisory cook. Welcome. We have Christine Sir, who works at the Ocean Protection Council as the Water Quality Program Manager. Welcome. Kevin Chan, who works at CAL FIRE as an operations manager in the Office of the State Fire Marshal's Pipeline Safety Division. Welcome. And China Tai, who works for the agency's biodiversity and habitat team as a California Climate Action Corps communications fellow. Welcome. Welcome all, and thank you for taking time out of your day to share your experiences with us. And before we begin, I want to give a shout out to Trisha Shortridge and Megan Nguyen, who helped put this panel together and helped develop the questions for today. So big, round of applause for them, and thank you for all that you've done for this career panel. So, like I said before, we'll have 5 questions. We'll be asking the panelists. We do ask the panelists to be able to answer, the questions to the best of your abilities. There's no wrong questions here. All your opinions are valid, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. We don't necessarily have to go in order of the introductions for who answers first. If someone wants to jump in and answer the question first, great. Otherwise, I will just call on people to answer the question. So, we'll see how this goes. So to kick this off, I will ask the first question. Let's start with kind of some further introductions to hear about you all. So if you could please introduce yourself and tell us what currently inspires you in your role at the state. And I'll ask if anybody wants to lead off with us, or I'll just call on somebody first. Any volunteers to answer the first question?
I'll go ahead and go.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Ikimoto. I work for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And when I first started, it was the California Department of Fish and Game. So I've been with the department for 24 years in the law enforcement division, and a total of 27 if you count the time I started as a SIAD. And honestly, the reason that I'm still here is the quality of people that I work with is just amazing. I work along some amazingly, incredibly talented folks in our law enforcement division, as well as our department scientific staff, because actually that's where I thought I was going to be and ended up here in our law enforcement division. So that's what inspires me, is just continuing to work with really talented folks.
Great. That's great to hear. And great career you've had so far. Anyone else would like to volunteer to go next for the question?
I can go next. Sri. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum from Jennifer because I'm only in state service for less than 2 years now. But I'm the Coastal Habitats Program Manager at Ocean Protection Council, and this career trajectory is sort of a rebirth for me because I was in the pharmaceutical industry for the past 15 years. Prior to that, for many, many years, and this is a very deliberate pivot to kind of because at the stage in my life I felt like it was time to contribute to protection of our natural resources, and specifically like the ocean, which has always been sort of a muse and a refuge for me. And I once I acknowledged that, the path became clear. And in my current role, I handle a portfolio of projects that include coastal mapping, coastal habitat conservation, blue carbon, a pretty wide variety of projects. And I'm fortunate to be in this really deeply impactful space, because it also means that I get an opportunity to make sure communities are better engaged in policy making, making sure that there is awareness. So it's kind of a unique position, and that's what I really love about this job and the breadth of opportunities that it gives me. It's a very small and mighty team, so I think it's really great because you get to touch on so many different projects and work with multiple stakeholders, and I am looking forward to contributing more to the state and the community that I'm part of through this work. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to?
I'll jump in next year. My name's Kevin Chan. I'm the operations manager for the Pipeline Safety Division within CAL FIRE Office of the State Fire Marshal. I've been with the Office of the State Fire Marshal for 8 years now. And what I really, really love about my job, unfortunately, is the same thing as everybody else, which is that I get to work with potentially one of the best teams, one of the best teams that anyone can ask for. It really is like a family here. CAL FIRE is an unusual situation where we have a large group of people that collaborate together, that have a lot of very different, diverse roles. One of the things that we always say is that there are people that wear the patch and people that make the patch wearable, and I just happen to be one of the people that make the patch wearable. In 2015, we had 5 pipeline safety engineers for the entire state. Currently today, we regulate over 5,300 miles of hazardous liquid pipeline, and we have a total of 20 engineers who oversee the safety of those pipelines and conduct inspections and ensure that we don't run into any ecological disasters through breach of pipeline, or if we have any sort of or if there's leaks, or just to make sure that we transport our oil and our hazardous liquids safely. So I'm proud to be part of the team, and I think that we make a great environmental impact. And I wake up every morning and I'm excited to come to work and do what I do every single day.
Great, that's awesome to hear.
You can go next. So as I was introduced, my name is Christine, sir. I'm also, like Sri, very new to the state, and joined OPC just in January of this year. But I think, just echoing what everyone has said, being able to work with other folks who are really dedicated to this work and really are passionate, and so many really excellent scientists and people who work in policy and on all of the different kind of breadth of topics. But something I really am inspired by and think about when I think about this position and other jobs I've had in my career is sort of, I really am focused on the fact that these are public resources, right? Like, we are working on protection of public resources. So it's for me, it's for you, it's for everyone. And so being able to be a part of that, being able to work on coastal conservation, or, I work a lot, my portfolio is a lot of focus on water quality. So I do plastics, I work on coastal water quality, dealing with things like ocean acidification, contaminants, and I get to work with so many really great partners at the state on those issues. But ultimately, I really, in the way that I personally relate to it, is like, I love to go to the beach. I love to enjoy public lands. I love to, think about how California is leading the way in conserving biodiversity and all these things. So being able to be a part of that is what I find really inspiring about this position.
Thank you. It's great to hear. Stephen or China? Stephen. You're on mute, by the way.
So thank you for giving me an opportunity to be amongst Pacific Islander and the people who share my heritage. So I'd like to introduce myself as the question. I wrote this down to keep my thoughts in order. So I happen to be a product of the state, actually. So starting in San Mateo County Social Services, making a historic first there. Born addicted to heroin, sent me straight into foster care, where for 7 years, I only knew a good family with strange weekend visits, so horrible I do not remember them. Taitali Stephen Clemente, that's my birth name. My full-blooded Tongan father I never knew, Easy Tolo Taitali Clemente. Exiled at some point, no contact, heroin-addicted mother lost custody in 1977-ish. Historic fun fact, San Mateo County Department of Social Services assigned me my own social worker. And in that era, it was a new trend. Caseloads were the departments. I was the first to have one assigned caseworker. A broken adoption, a string of group home failures, and thank goodness divine intervention made me a ward of the court. So here is where I built a pathway through the rest of my adolescence, accepting and understanding and making the most of my court-ordered name, Stephen Tyler Beck. So that's my introduction, and I think that it's relevant to the topic of my Pacific Islander heritage. What inspires me in my role with the state? I represent an important division in the California Conservation Corps, who works with CAL FIRE and many of these other oceanic agencies as well. The Culinary or Food Service Department, and I'm inspired to influence the important culture change in how food service is perceived and the resources and compensation associated with this career path. So that's what I had prepared for question 1. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing your story with us. I would say you yourself are an inspiration for where you've been able to come from to where you are now. Thank you for sharing that with us. China.
And I will end off with introducing myself as China Tai. As mentioned earlier, I am a California Climate Action Corps Fellow, and this means that I am part of a fellowship with other fellows all across California. There's over 300 of us working in the fields of urban greening, wildfire resiliency, and food recovery and organic waste. I'm here as a communications fellow with the biodiversity and habitat team, and I love being able to see so many different leaders that are so knowledgeable about the different intersections and nuances of our natural resources and our environment and the people that live in California. And so I'm amazed to see how they can answer difficult questions and help make decisions. And that's something that I really like being surrounded by in this field.
Thank you. And thank you all for answering that first question. I mean, it's pretty obvious you guys have a lot of passion for the work you're doing. Heard a lot about the teams you work for, the passion of the teams you have, the atmospheres, and then the protecting our resources. So very, very great to hear all that. So
interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
So, as this career panel goes on, for those who are attending, the Q&A option is down below on that bar, but feel free to ask the questions as they come up, and at the end of all of this, we'll address them.
Thank you. So our second question is, how do you think your heritage has influenced your fellowship or career at Natural Resources Agency? How has it helped you succeed in your role today? Leland. You're on mute again.
I have my script here in front of me, so I thought I'd just take this on. So my Pacific Islander DNA manifests itself in how I function. So finding my way to CNRA is not surprising. One example, an ocean connection, an appreciation for the aqua universe. I feel that where I live in a very rural part of our state near Coloma, Georgetown, if anyone knows where Georgetown is. Rural forest land, backwoods USA. It is here I know the ocean, the sea, the rolling waves of life, understories of creatures. I believe my natural passion to value all life, diversity in our journeys and in our ecosystems. This helps me be successful in my job with the state and helping the 18 to 25-year-olds that come into our training program.
All right, thank you. Jennifer.
In thinking about this question, I looked at it a couple of different ways. And the one that most rung true for me is I'm Japanese, Chinese, and Portuguese. So number one, my dad being full Japanese, my mom Chinese and Portuguese. Technically, there was some family tension for my grandparents prior to them getting together. But it's caused an interesting thing when it comes to resource appreciation and actually going out and utilizing the resource, whether it be harvesting or gathering. My dad was a big diver, and we would spend most of our time along the coast as I was a child going, because he'd scuba dived and free dived, and we would get abalone and fish. And I just got to see how the coast changed all those years that we continued to go to the coast and have our family vacations, and him going and harvesting fish and abalone, and just kind of having this connection where I'm like, this is something I want to protect. So that's where I ended up, I wanted to study marine biology and fisheries biology, and I did that. And then it pivoted me towards going and becoming a game warden and actually protecting some of the resources that I actually saw diminish along my lifetime as I would visit the coast. And that was actually my first assignment, was actually Marin County, and I had Marin to Mendocino as my area of patrol. And I got to patrol all the areas I went as a child with my father and mom. So but that's one of the things. The other thing is like we came from an immigrant family. I was born here, but my grandparents weren't, and my mom's father has a Chinese restaurant, and I just saw how hard he worked and how hard the amount of time that you put into something that you love to make it successful. And so understanding that you have to continue to work hard to get that success in your life. So those are the things that connected me to, I think, my success now within my career.
Very cool. Anyone like to go next?
I can go next. I think very similar to what Jennifer said. I feel like my heritage really instilled my work ethic. How hard I've seen my parents work to raise their kids. I was born and raised in south of India, and it was pretty important that we have this really strong work ethic. And as part of growing up, it's also diversity is really like intrinsic to how we grew up, because we grew up with a pretty diverse set of people. And I felt that kind of makes me particularly effective in my role and the way I think about the communities that we serve, So I feel like that's something that comes together for me as part of my heritage. But that said, my career path is also a pretty non-traditional one for someone of South Asian descent. And I noticed that as I was getting into marine conservation in school, I went back to school to study marine conservation. And there wasn't really anybody I could look to for what does it look like for somebody from my community? I did end up reaching out to other alumni, but it's something significantly less of a presence than, say, a STEM-based career path, where that was a more traditional career path. And the lack of South Asian presence, this is something that I'd like to see change. And my career hopefully brings awareness to more people in public service to say that, hey, this is a great opportunity, and this is an amazing way to kind of serve for public service and this is something that really inspires me to succeed in a role like this. So in that sense, my heritage has really made me realize that there is a lot of opportunity here, and this is somewhere where we really need to make our presence felt a little bit more. So yeah, that's what my take on that is.
All right, thank you.
I could go ahead and hop in. So I really love this question because I think this is not something I think about a lot. But when I thought about it more, I noticed that in my family, I'm Chinese Filipino, and with my upbringing, we often we live in care for the comfort of our loved ones. And so I noticed that my family will like go out of their way to make sure that I'm well fed or that I'm taking care of myself as best as possible. And so I think I also want to be able to provide for that for people that I love in my time now and in future generations, my future families. And I think that helps me also dig deeper into like, why am I doing this? And it's because I'm so passionate about sharing about the work I do and wanting to help the future of so many different people. So I think knowing that every time my family comes together, we make sure to check in on each other and just like do the essentials like, oh, have you eaten yet? Or like, oh, like, where have you been? And I think it's like a really natural way of just caring for the people around me.
Thank you. Kevin or Christine?
Say extra +1 to what China just said. That was exactly what I was thinking of, just sort of the focus on community and taking care of each other and service to our loved ones and our communities, and how that really, that really connects with working in public service and working with communities and wanting to make sure that we're taking care of each other and the natural resources that people are dependent on and enjoy in the state.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Kevin.
So yeah, I really struggled with this question because I didn't really see that my heritage influenced my fellowship career at CNRA, but rather when I really think about it, it's the other way around. Because with CAL FIRE, they really place an emphasis on diversity and inclusion, where I never saw myself or my culture being pivotal. But I know that the directive from leadership, from the top down, including the director, the state fire marshal, they want an inclusive environment where they draw from experiences and knowledge and just the different points of views of all the different cultures and of basically people from different backgrounds to contribute their experiences in order to resolve sometimes complicated or difficult situations that might need a different perspective. So rather than me seeing how my heritage affects me, I think it's more of the other way around, where the agency and the department has brought out a view that made me realize that I bring something to the table by being a little bit different, and that I guess um, that there's value to my heritage, I guess. Because growing up, I didn't really feel that way, but after working here, I think that civil service has brought that out in me and made me realize that there are benefits and advantages to being Asian American.
I mean, that's great. For everybody's answers, I kind of want to do a follow-up as I've been hearing you all talk. Like, definitely seeing a theme of, your heritage, representation, and just kind of want to get everybody's thoughts on, like, how do we, in a sense, help improve that? How do we, as AAPI, how do we get more representation, in a sense, in natural resources agency, or just in general? I've heard folks say, in their field, they didn't see folks the representation, or like Kevin, he never thought of how he could, in a sense, I kind of think of Kevin like an inspiration to others, seeing someone like yourself or you all in your positions, like, inspire others to get in those fields that may not be, typical kind of stereotype fields people tend to think of, where you may see, AAPI. So I just kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on how do we kind of help with that diversity aspect. Kevin, you're on mute, by the way.
I'll be honest. I would have to think about that. Right now, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure where I would begin with that.
Okay.
I think you bring up a challenging question, because what you don't want is the tokenism, right? And that's where sometimes it's like, I know when I started my career way back when, there was a lot of where it felt like you were the one. There was a lot of, oh, we didn't have one of you. So that's good that we have one of you now. I am glad that things have changed and progressed in not only the Department of Fish and Wildlife, but in natural resources, and seeing the diversity that we represent from our great diverse state. But I think part of it is just being out there and being professional in what you do. So for me, I just think of always putting, you only have one chance to make a good impression. So you go out there with your best foot. When you meet people, you are kind, you're professional, you give them the information that they need. Sometimes that information, for at least in my line of work, might actually come with a citation. And I have to sell that too, right? And give some education and not be condescending when I do that. And it's being able to talk to people and show that you actually have a human side. And I think that is important. So a lot of it is just being out there and doing your job the best that you can be, and being the best representative, not only of the department, but in how you are going to engage with the community.
Great. And no pressure for anybody else to answer the question. If you feel free to, great. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question. All right. The next question is, can you tell us about any projects that you have worked on or anticipate working on that you are particularly excited about? I'm sure you all have amazing projects. Kevin?
I'll jump in on this one. So I'm actually going to be changing careers within CNRA within a couple of weeks. I'll be moving into the Underground Infrastructure Directorate over at the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety. And I'll be spearheading a program to develop an education outreach program for safe underground excavation, as well as one call. And I'm particularly excited about, because I've always been outreach and education have always been things that I have been passionate about, and especially if I could do it in a way where it increases public safety, because I realize that the underground infrastructure, there's so many impacts to it. People think that it's something simple, but it could be providing power to an urban area. It could be getting information such as network lines out to rural areas. It could be preventing basically disasters for if gas lines blow and they take out neighborhoods. And it can be preventing ecological disasters like we're doing right now. In order to keep the oil in the pipe, we have to make sure that people don't damage the pipe when they're excavating. So for me, the ability to combine two of my different passions together into one makes it an ideal project for me. And I look forward to moving forward. Repetitive words. I look forward to moving into the new project that I'll be working on.
Great. And that will now make us coworkers in the same office. So when you come
I'm
on board,
very excited.
anyone would like to go next?
I can go ahead and share. So as a communications fellow, I get to capture stories and content for the biodiversity and habitat team primarily. But recently I was on a trip to Orleans, California, where it is up north, 5 hours away from the Sacramento area. And I got to go with our Deputy Secretary of Tribal Affairs, also Deputy Secretary of Biodiversity and Habitat, and Deputy Secretary of Forestry and Wildfire Resiliency. And I learned so much on that trip, and about tribal governments and our partnership with the state. And so I'm excited to help create a long form project video of our experience and of CNRI's connection to the tribes that we visited and what they're doing in their communities to take care of the lands and to showcase why we need to continue working with these tribes and creating a good partnership so that the work that they do and they've done for time immemorial is translated into what we do as well. So I get to personalize CNRA, and I love doing interviews and telling these stories and then putting it together in something that is catchy and interesting to look at and to absorb information from. So that is coming soon, and yes, I like working on videos.
Awesome. Anybody else like to volunteer before I call on someone?
I can go next. Oh, it's really hard to top those two projects. They sound so exciting, Kevin and China. This is amazing. It's very exciting to hear about your work. So mine is more on the, kind of a bridge between a science and policy sort of work, where I work on coastal habitats, right? So one of the projects that in the past year that I've been working on is a project on coastal carbon sequestration, or what's called blue carbon, which really relates to like stored carbon in coastal ecosystems like wetlands or eelgrass beds or kelp, right? So this turned out to be interesting because the reason I bring it up is because it turned out to be like a true partnership between state agencies and experts in the field, because this is something that we've been looking to for a while and evaluating blue carbon habitats and how they might fit into the state's target setting, like carbon stock inventory and target setting. And this is all determined by the California Air Resources Board's scoping plan. So a lot of different pieces, and pulling these together and making some tangible recommendations by working truly like we're all working towards the same goal. And excuse me. And how do we best distill this information in a meaningful way, and this path from like science to inform policy, which I've kind of read about but never really had a chance to put into action. So a very different flavor of projects from what Kevin and China shared, but I think this really goes to show that in a true partnership space you can actually make these things happen in public service. Because you are in that position to make these connections work together and to put this into actual practice of policy development. So that was very exciting for me to see this and see this project through.
Awesome. That sounds really exciting. Christine, Stephen, or Jennifer?
I can go. So I'll stick to my script here. I wrote out, so the California Conservation Corps will be delivering an advanced crew leader training in June 17th to the 25th, anticipating another milestone in CCC culinary, as we'll provide remote catering to about 50 participants over 5 days, about 550 meals, and a more fiscally responsible way to go. The training targets our best in our program, the future civil servants of our agency, and maybe yours. And off script, I just am really excited to see the influence. I've been only 4 years with the California Conservation Corps, prior with law enforcement and working in corrections, probation, which qualified me for my current position. Now, I work with a gentleman named Rob Griffith, who's now State Parks Director, Sierra District, who, when he left, he actually hired me into the state. I implored him to stay aware of how much potential food service and culinary in the CCC can have. And he took me up on that and actually organized all staff event, and the Placer Center in Auburn catered that, and I went and supported that operation. And then the advanced crew leader training that we're doing from all over the state, our best are going to be there. Donner Memorial State Park, he had a lot to do with us being able to have that location. So I think as I hear all my peers on the panel talk about collaboration, and taking care of others, and community, sensitive to community needs, I think that's a deep rooted part of who I've been and who I'll always be, from my heritage. And it's exciting to be able to hear that from others.
Awesome.
I'll go ahead and go. Because I knew you were going to pick me next, probably. So I didn't want to be on the spot. No, when in thinking about projects, it's hard. There's so many. Every day is a different day for the day of a wildlife officer. Now moving up and being an assistant chief, that it does become now I don't get to go out and do the fun stuff as much, and I get to manage people a little bit more. But the one thing that I've been doing for the past 9 years is working and teaching at our academy. So I teach cultural diversity and racial profiling at our academy, and this is a learning domain block that all law enforcement officers for the state of California have to go through. And I think it's really important to come from leadership, not only to teach that, I teach their leadership and ethics course, but for them to see their own leadership come back and teach courses such as these. So to be inspired by new officers that are coming in, making sure that we're setting really good foundation on how we as wildlife officers and state law enforcement officers treat our public, and how we are good community officers, and making sure that we're doing everything most ethically and morally correct when we are engaging with all of the citizens that are coming out to enjoy our natural resources. So to me, giving back and being able to continue to teach at our academy is something that inspires me, and then makes me feel like, okay, yeah, this is we're in the right direction. Our rudders are correct. So that's something that I've been enjoying.
Sounds like an awesome program and a great thing to be part of. Christine.
I am very excited about some work we're doing on microplastics. OPC helped develop a microplastic strategy for the state, and it is the first and I think still only microplastic strategy in the country to tackle the issue of microplastic pollution. And as part of that, I am working on specific exploration of specific sectors. So things like textiles or plastics that come from tires, that we know tires will pollute with tiny little microparticles as well. But really getting to think about, what ways can we innovate, and talking to tons of experts and partners in these specific areas. It's really exciting to think about, there's a lot of potential opportunities. Plastic pollution impacts everyone. We all need to use plastic in aspects of our lives. It's everywhere, but also, there's tons of impacts from it. And so I like that it is a pretty impactful issue, I think, just in terms of my everyday life and members of the public, but also there's a lot of room for innovation and advancing to really tackle the huge plastic crisis that is impacting our environment and public health.
Wow. Did you say it was the first in the nation, this type of program, or
The statewide microplastic strategy, yes.
wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what all you all talked about seems very fascinating and exciting. Thank you for sharing. So our next question would be, what advice would you give to young AAPI individuals who are interested in pursuing a career in public service? Kevin.
I'll jump in on this mainly because people usually don't ask me for advice. And this will be specific to AAPI because growing up Asian, there are a lot of cultural hurdles that need to be overcome. One of the things that I think that that's going to be challenging is to become process oriented rather than results oriented. Because growing up, it's study to get good grades to get into a good college, get into a good college to get a good job, get a good job to make money. So everything's focused towards results. But instead of that, go to school. It has to become process oriented, where you go to school to learn, and everything that you do, it's going to be moving at a different pace with a state. And I think that where a lot of people end up getting discouraged is when they don't see immediate results of their work. That they have to understand that it takes time to make achievements and to make progress. So that's the first thing I would recommend. And the other thing I would recommend is not to work in a silo, because growing up, it's study, get A's, be at the top of your class. Everything is about individual achievement. But when you go into public service, it's going to be a team effort. It's building those relationships with internal and external stakeholders, building relationships with team members. And it's going to be a lot of collaboration, working as a group. And that's really the only way that we make progress in the state, is when we work collaboratively. So that's a really hard hurdle to overcome, I think, for coming out of the Asian American culture. Those two things I found for myself were the hardest areas to break out of. So anyone interested in public service, I would definitely look at just start changing your mentality about how you approach those areas.
Thank you.
I think Kevin encapsulated it all. But I will also say, just step out of your comfort zone. Just do it. Sometimes it is, representation matters and it is important, but sometimes it's like, find your passion. And if passion is public service, maybe it's starting at one career path and then being able to pivot somewhere else, just so that you can have those types of different experiences. I started off as a graduate student and then a scientific aide. And then I saw some being able to work with some other good folks with the department, saw, hey, this is another opportunity with the state. Honestly, when I first started, like I said, I wanted to go and be a biologist and never thought I would be a game warden. And also thought maybe I'd work for state parks. There's so many places that you can work with the state and for public service and conservation. It's just getting your foot in the door. There are career centers. There are people that you can talk to that do hiring panels that can give you some experience. But it's you gotta have the tenacity, and sometimes understand that you might be disappointed, and don't let it go ahead and slow you down. Pick yourself up and continue on.
Thank you. I think the point of how in the state we can, pivot and shift around is a great thing to highlight.
Just to add on to that, I think in terms of the exploring different avenues and not limiting, yourself to a predefined expectation of what you are looking for, or a career path or a specific office. There's so many opportunities that really turn into something you might not expect in a good way. I would also say asking for help and exploring questions with mentors and role models, and just not being afraid to reach out to folks for advice and their perspective. I think, speaking for myself, I always really enjoy talking to folks about my career path so far, and I have asked so many people for help to get to this point. And the vast majority of the time, people are so generous with their time and with their insights, and are eager to help and support each other. But that was not something that came super naturally to me, asking for help and reaching out to people. And so that has been really an important part of my path to this point.
Great. And I agree. Reaching out for help is always a good thing to do.
I'd like to go next, primarily because I want to build on what Christine just said. I coming from the private sector to now the public sector, back in the private sector, a lot of these mentorship and networking opportunities were much more structured and built in, and there was a buffer for all of that. And when you come here, it's less of that structured way, but it definitely does exist. It's so much more organic. People are so generous with their time and with their knowledge. So please do take advantage of that. And I've had such a great time talking to people, and these are like really passionate people who are here because they want to do good for others, do good for their communities. It's public service. So I feel like definitely ask for those opportunities, because if you don't ask, they don't know, right? So take that upon yourself to ask for opportunities. And networking, the term is not just for like CEOs or just when you're job hunting, right? It's something that you want to do more organically, and you realize that it's actually enjoyable. Even for an introvert like me, it's been really great just listening to people's perspectives and understanding, why we're doing this all together. This all sounds very, I mean, I, at the risk of sounding cheesy, I would like to say that we're in this because we love what we do. So, and so keep that in mind. Don't forget why you're doing this, and also realize that there are people out here who are willing to help. And I think of late, is definitely within CNRA, we've had so many more opportunities for like formal, equitable practices such as like this. A lot more internship opportunities, and a lot more like fellowship opportunities. So be on the lookout for those. Get on those distribution lists. Take advantage of those opportunities. I think there is a lot more that exists now than there were maybe even like 4 or 5 years ago. So that's what I'd like to say.
Awesome. And I'll be someone who started their career off as an intern. Like, I think internships, fellowships, if anybody out there is listening, like, it's a great way to get it.
I'd love to, excuse me, I'd love to piggyback off what Shri said about how I spend a lot of my time being that kind of introvert and like not talking as much as I wanted to. And so I think I would just remind young AAPI individuals to use your voice, because your passion, your dedication, your commitment to wanting to help deserves to be heard by your community. And I think in my experience of being a fellow, I really liked how I was able to make an impact at a city level. And as I got more experience with with the state and just knowing their impact, knowing that at the state level, I can have a bigger voice and a bigger platform to share the issues that are important and valuable to so many different people. So just remembering that you deserve to be heard and to continue sharing stories on professional platforms like LinkedIn and your social media, and just knowing like if you want to reach more people, being in the public sector in the space is a great place to like make bigger change.
Awesome. Great. Stephen.
Well, the panel has really done an amazing job to just watch the recording. I mean, it's Kevin set a tone, and just everything that's been said. It's a testament to how many amazing people and things that are happening, and in the projects that are being developed, and it's just great. So I'll stick to my script, and thank goodness I wrote some things down, because this is a little bit daunting here to be in this company. Well, one, my advice would be to watch this recording, but I wrote my advice would be to take a look, find something of interest. Point being, the opportunities are out there in public service. Going to school and pursue something in a more concentrated field, or getting on board and developing yourself in your future in the present. I just think the point I'm trying to make is, if there's a will, there's a way, and the state public service option is, as the panel is a testament, an amazing place. Thank you.
Great. I mean, great to hear all that advice you guys have. Kevin, you gave good advice. Don't think that your advice is not good. But I mean, really, I agree with a lot of you on the points you brought up of just, one, having open mind. It's not, in a sense, it's collaboration. It's not so much results in a sense oriented. The goal is, process and speaking up for yourself, speaking up, speaking out. So I think what you all said was great. And that kind of leads into our last question, which is, How can we inspire the next generation of AAPI conservation leaders?
I can start out. I'd love to share that there's so much behind the scenes work in the environmental space that I think is very different every day for a lot of us. And I would encourage people to share those stories because I think people can see themselves doing that type of work and wanting to be part of that movement, of part of that protection and restoration and management of the place that we live in and the resources that we use. So I like to be on social media sharing the different types of work that we do, the different types of work that my supervisors, other leaders in my CNRA floor do, because I think I never know what might attract people to want to be part of that too. And so I think showing all the different ways that we're helping the environment is a great place to bring that curiosity for other people to want to be part of that too.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody next with words of inspiration?
I'll go. I think sometimes we get stuck in our day-to-day of what our work is, right? And we're doing our tasks, we're taking our team meetings, managing folks or projects. And sometimes you need to take a step back and actually go back out into the community on a hiring event, or go to schools and be on panels, such as panels like this, but even at a level, whether it be college panels, high school, even elementary, just to explain the work that we're doing here at CNRA, at the Department of Fish and Wildlife, at all of these amazing places that you can work with a department and give back to the community, as well as help protect our resources, because we want this to continue on for our kids, our grandchildren, for all folks, Californians, as well as folks that come to California to be able to enjoy. So sometimes you gotta take that step away from your desk and go out and talk to folks about how passionate you are about the work that you do. And I think that those times when they see that spark in your eye, that's going to help inspire folks to say, maybe I can do that too. So that's just my thoughts. Take it or leave it.
I'll piggyback on that one and just say, yeah, sharing our stories. I'm also more introverted, like other folks have said about themselves, but sharing our stories and who you are as part of that story and your position, I think having examples and role models for people to look up to. I always am inspired by hearing about people's stories. I'm so grateful to be on this panel with so many amazing people. I've learned so much and really appreciated all of your perspectives. But that sharing, I think, really goes a long way in connecting with people.
And I'd like to piggyback on what both of them said, which is like, I think that oftentimes people overlook what's considered generational wealth, and people think that it's financial, when realistically, I think our resources is really what our generational wealth is, and having those resources in the future is probably one of the most precious things that we can maintain, and it takes a lot of work, really. I mean, all of our natural resources are replenishable, but it really takes a lot of work and a lot of effort on our part. And also, for this question specifically, it talks about uh, conservation public service leaders, and I think a lot of people misunderstand what a leader is, and I think that by reframing that as well, and a leader is just simply somebody that people follow, and it's as simple as and to get people to follow you is just as simple as being a servant. So I think that really leading by example and just showing people that the little things matter when it comes to conservation, it really gets them into participating and being and just being good stewards of our environment, I think. So For me, that's what it would be.
Awesome. Thank you. Bree or Stephen?
Stephen, you want to go next? Feel
It's up
free
to you. I will just, again, stick to my script. Tell your story, and I heard others say that. It's tell your story. Associate your life into today's world and make an impact. Be that agent of change. Even if it is changing yourself, seek out positive and productive personal journeys. I think it's important to value every second and every moment. And I would advise them to write their own fantastic story and consider public service and to protect our natural resources. Your time is now.
All right, Sri.
Yeah, similar vein, also like building awareness, telling your story. That's a huge part of it, but also be that voice within your own organization to really internalize, equitable practices in your hiring, or build it into the DNA of public service organizations to have that outreach to young professionals to say, hey, this is an attractive venue. Public service is and this is what it is, and have those informational webinars. Basically, I'm trying to showcase opportunities within public service from just as an individual and as an organization, and having intentional either like leadership training. I took the leadership to mean also like, how do we train individuals to grow and lead organizations, not just stay stagnant, but have intentional leadership training for young professionals in an equitable way, and then reduce barriers to entry for new hires, and having these internships and fellowship opportunities where you can go out there and be that champion for bringing in new AAPI professionals into the workforce. So I think inspiring just through building awareness, building it into the fabric of your organization. Those are some key things that we can do as public servants to have more representation and more leadership roles filled in our organizations.
All right, thank you. I appreciate all those answers. Definitely hear a theme of getting out there in the community, telling our stories. Telling our stories is a way to inspire others, I think, is great. So that concludes the formal part of the questions, and we can now turn over to anybody who has questions online. If we have any questions in the chat, or if we have anybody who has or like to raise their hand to ask any questions. I'll first ask, do we have any questions in the Q&A?
They have all been answered through all of your
We give people a few minutes if they want to put anything in the chat.
Yeah.
If anybody has a question they'd like to raise their hand, please feel free to.
We had one person comment that Janae really wanted to thank you guys all for your perspectives and vulnerability and representation on this panel.
I guess everybody's answer was that great, that inspiring, that people just are speechless right now. Do we have anybody who's raised their hand at all to ask a question?
I don't see any raised hands at the moment.
I have a question. I'm a fellow, and so Jennifer, you talked about kind of like the sort of othering in the space especially when you first started out. I kind of wanted to know if anyone else had like a similar experience, and how would you, I guess, navigate through that experience to succeed in the public sector if you felt that othering and you felt like maybe it prevents maybe from doing your best in the job, but how would you like, I guess achieve?
Again, I don't know if anybody else had that experience except me, it sounds like, or at least maybe they're pondering their type of othering. I know for me, it was a challenge at first, and I think being new to state service, being new in the department and what my role was, I think I took it with a grain of salt. Throughout school, I was the one Asian kid at my elementary school, and I was supposed to be related to the other Asian kid who was Korean. Right. And so I had already built kind of like a little bit of a thick skin for some of any kind of teasing or otherness. And I just was me. So I would just say, no, that's not my brother or cousin. But I'm Jennifer and we can play or we can go hang out. And I kind of felt that when I got into the work that I'm doing now with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, it was like, okay, maybe you don't know who I am. And so why don't I let you get to know me? And say, oh, I appreciate that you think that. Honestly, this is why I think that's important that I'm here. And how can we be partners? And maybe because of the time that they spent with me, and again, continuing to be professional, it changed their outlook and gave them a chance to reflect and maybe come back and go, oh, maybe that wasn't a cool thing to say at that time, right? And I did actually have a couple of folks that were like, oh, I didn't mean that. That's totally not how I meant it. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of how I navigated through it, was just taking a step back and realizing that most people say things sometimes not realizing what the impact it would have, and that wasn't their true intentions. So I gave them some grace.
Thank you. Did answer my question. I do have another one though. So my next question was, I guess for me, I never really imagined myself working for public service or for CNRA at all, even in my undergraduate career. It just felt so like far away from me. I kind of want to know, like, for all of you all, was working for like state, federal, was that like an end goal, or what was it about it, I guess, that really enticed you to I guess pursue it?
So for me, it actually kind of just fell into my lap, and then I ended up loving doing it. I absolutely fell in love with it. At no point in my life did I ever imagine working for civil service. But today I couldn't imagine doing anything else, because I feel a great sense of community when I do this, and I feel like I'm being part of the greater good. So yeah, it's just something that I never expected to fall into, but I'm so glad I did, because I can't imagine my life without it now.
I'd like to piggyback on that with the idea of it falling into your lap. So I was very content with a civil servant position with the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, and became a supervisor with the help of my supervisor by alerting me to a position in probation. And then they moved on, and I was in a good position to get that. That mentor, my old supervisor, sent me an email and said, there's a state position. Don't you live near Greenwood? And again, I'm very rural out in the woods. And there was a facility, a California Conservation Corps site, looking for a supervisory cook. And I was lucky to qualify, checked it out. And, I've just loved the work. But what I was doing was civil servant work already. But I think this is just multiplied by so much. Just on a much greater scale, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it wasn't necessarily the goal I had, but I'm very fortunate that it fell into my lap, as was said just previously. I'm 10 minutes from my house, and I've been able to work hard. I want to just take advantage of the mic and thank everyone for validating some of the things that just are internally in me. I have no birth relatives, so I have no connection to anybody blood but my own 3 boys. That's the only blood I know. So work ethic and putting family and being of service to your family and caring for their well-being and then the community, those are near and dear to my heart. And again, there's no ocean with water, but there's an ocean of natural resources that I live around. And that work ethic was able to, be pretty successful with only a master's degree in the School of Hard Knocks. So it's been an incredible journey.
Well, I don't see any questions in the Q&A, and I don't think we have anybody with their hand raised. Did anybody raise their hand in the meantime?
Nope, there are none.
All right. Well, with that then, we have no questions from our viewers online. I'd just like to thank all of you here for participating in our panel. I'd like to thank those who helped assemble and put this panel together. I'd like to thank our AAPI Heritage Month Committee for the agency putting a great month together. And just thank you all for sharing your words of inspiration, your experience, your viewpoints. And it's been a great panel, I think, today to hear from you all. I just want to thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Yes, thank you very much for organizing, and it was a pleasure meeting all of you.
Likewise.
Thank you, everyone.
Well,
With that, we'll conclude today's panel. Thank you all.
We have a comment, not a
We have a comment?
question.
Okay. All right.
No worries. Someone anonymously wants to say that you all are so inspiring. And you could grow your impact on the next generation by attending a career fair to show students and job seekers that they have representation in civil service. So
Awesome. Thank you. All right. If there are no other last minute questions or comments from the audience, we will conclude today's panel. And again, thank you all for joining us today.
thank you, everybody.